Today, I will tell you an amazing story about a man who left a mark in the hearts of millions of people and created one of the world's greatest teachings. The story of the Buddha. Who was he? What was his path? And what is it about Buddhism that has spread around the world and still helps people find inner peace? Let's start at the beginning. Buddha was born around the 6th century BC in the small principality of Kapilavastu, in what is now Nepal. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He was born into a royal family. His father was King Shuddhodana, and his mother was Queen Maya. Legend has it that on the eve of his birth, the queen had a dream in which a white elephant entered her womb. This was an omen of the birth of a great man. From his birth, astrologers predicted that Siddhartha would either become a great king or renounce worldly life and become an enlightened teacher. His father wanted his son to become a powerful ruler and shielded him from all suffering and trouble. The prince grew up in luxury, enjoyed all the pleasures of life and knew no sorrow. However, at the age of about 29, Siddhartha leaves the palace and encounters the so-called Four Spectacles: an old man, a sick man, a dead man, and a wandering monk. These encounters shake him to his core. He realizes that no one escapes old age, sickness, and death. And then he realizes the futility of material pleasures. That same night he leaves the palace, his wife Yasodhara and his newborn son Rahulu in search of truth and liberation from suffering. He becomes an ascetic, studying with renowned spiritual teachers of the time, practicing severe meditation and self-torture, but realizes that this does not lead to true enlightenment. After years of searching, he decides to follow the middle path, to avoid the extremes of excessive luxury and excessive self-denial. It is on the banks of the Neranjara River, under a Bodhi tree, that he sits in meditation with the firm intention of not getting up until he attains enlightenment. After a long and deep meditation, he overcomes the temptations and fears with which the demon Mara is testing him. And that night he attains the state of Buddha, awakened. He realizes the Four Noble Truths. Life is full of suffering, dukkha. The cause of suffering is desires and attachments. There is a path of liberation from suffering. That path is the Eightfold path. The Eightfold path consists of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right way of the right effort, right attention, right concentration. After enlightenment, the Buddha sets out to preach his teachings. His first sermon is a speech at Deer Park in Sarnath, where he expounds the essence of the Four Noble Truths. Interestingly, there was no place for strict dogma in his teachings. He taught openly and often used parables and metaphors so that his disciples could better understand the essence. For example, one of his famous parables is about a man wounded by an arrow. Instead of seeking answers as to who fired the arrow and why, it is important to pull the arrow out and begin to heal. So too in life. It is important to practice and free oneself from suffering. The Buddha lived a long life, carrying the light of his teachings. He died at the age of about 80 in the city of Kushinagar. His last words were, "All constituent things are impermanent. Strive tirelessly." There is also a legend of how the Buddha once met a murderer named Angulimala, who wore a necklace made from the fingers of his victims. The Buddha addressed him with kindness and compassion, and eventually this gesture changed the life of Angulimala, who became his disciple and attained enlightenment. Now, let's talk about Buddhism as a teaching. Buddhism is not just a religion, it is a way of life. It teaches that all suffering stems from attachments and desires. When we stop clinging to worldly pleasures, we find freedom and peace. There is no creator God in Buddhism. There is the law of karma, cause and effect. Everything we do comes back to us, shaping our destiny. Buddhism also teaches meditation. It is an essential practice that helps to clear the mind and come to the realization of the present moment. There are several branches of Buddhism: Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. Each has its own characteristics, but they are all based on the teachings of the Buddha. Theravada is a more conservative trend, widespread in Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Burma. It emphasizes personal liberation. Mahayana is a broader trend, common in China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. Here, the emphasis is on helping other beings achieve enlightenment. Vajrayana is Tibetan Buddhism, combining meditation, mantras, and rituals. Interestingly, Buddhism has had a huge influence not only on spiritual culture, but also on the art, architecture, and philosophy of many countries. Buddhist temples and monasteries such as Borobudur in Indonesia or Potala in Tibet are breathtaking in their beauty and grandeur. Buddhism has also given the world many symbols. One of the most famous is the Dharma wheel, symbolizing the Buddha's teachings and the Eightfold Path. The lotus symbolizes purity and spiritual awakening, and images of a smiling Buddha symbolize inner joy and peace. Now, millions of people around the world follow Buddhist practices and find support and harmony in them. Many great minds, such as Albert Einstein, have expressed respect for Buddhism, calling it the most scientific religion. What can we take from Buddhism? First and foremost, the ability to let go, to not cling to the temporary. The realization that everything passes. Calmness and focus on the present moment. Compassion for others, and an understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. The Buddha taught us not to take our word for it, but to verify everything with our own experience. His path is a path of personal practice, self-observation, and wisdom. This story is about a man who traveled a long road, giving up wealth to find the ultimate wealth, peace, and awakening. His life was an example that each of us can change, find harmony, and become a better person. If you liked this story, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what topics you are interested in. Thank you for watching, and may there always be light in your heart.